have an awful lot of pages here, so Suzanne, I'm going to be the one you have to. Good morning. On behalf of the Memphis Area Women's Council and all the women of Tennessee, I want to thank you for holding these hearings. It's gratifying to see our State Human Rights Commission taking time and effort across the state to hear the voices of concerned citizens. I'm here today to speak up and out for women, and specifically on the epidemic of violence against women and girls. Violence hits women every day, economic violence and physical and sexual violence. On the job, we are injured when we are paid wages lower than men who are doing the same work with the same training and experience. Women are paid less than men in every age group and across all education levels. Women continue to be more likely to be poor, and if they are poor, they are likely to have responsibility alone for housing, feeding, and clothing children. This economic violence should not be tolerated. It's against the law to pay unequal wages. Wage discrimination is illegal. And yet thousands of companies, thousands of employers knowingly pay women less every day. Companies are breaking the law every day. Occasionally a brave group of women, such as those who work for Walmart, go to court. Occasionally a brave woman, such as Lily Ledbetter, goes to court to demand that these employment crimes, this economic violence, stop. The Lily Ledbetter Fair Pay Act gives employees time to file against employers for unfair wages. Women must use that right. And governments must provide enough staff and resources to investigate and charge and change companies. Laws are only as good as their enforcement. The Equal Employment Opportunity Commission needs more staff and more resources so they can follow up on wage discrimination complaints. Related state agencies must be equally strong and intent. A stronger EEOC could also increase penalties and improve work conditions related to sexual harassment in the workplace. Despite laws on the books and decades of corporate training sessions and compliance officers, we regularly hear horror stories about how women are treated at work. They are touched, they are leered at, they are called names and taunted, sometimes they are raped. The situation is just as dangerous and damaging for our girls in their schools. A study undertaken by the Women's Council and the University of Memphis Center for Research on Women surveyed more than 600 students, girls and boys, in public and private schools. We asked students to tell us what they had experienced at school, ranging from sexual rumors to being touched, grabbed, and pinched, to being forced into sex. These unwelcome sexual overtures create what the law calls a hostile environment. 9 out of 10 girls and 8 of 10 boys reported they had experienced sexual harassment at least once at school. 3 in 10 girls were kissed or hugged when they didn't want it. 3 in 10 girls were almost forced to have sex at school. And the girls forced to have sex were 6% of our responders. Sexual harassment is against the law, period, including at school. Schools at every level, through colleges, should be required to create and disseminate clear rules about what is against the law, who students can tell if abuse happens, and what the punishment will be for those who do it. Another category of violence, intimate partner violence, is the leading cause of injury to women, more than car accidents, muggings, and rapes combined, as reported by national and international health organizations. We're talking here about loved ones battering and injuring and sometimes killing other loved ones with fists, belts, lamps, fireplace logs, tire irons, chains, vehicles, skillets, pistols, shotguns. You get what I mean, anything at hand. In Tennessee, the crime is still called domestic violence, and it actually refers to persons in relationship as a household. So it can be boy and girlfriends, roommates, uncles and nephews, grandsons and grandmothers, as well as husbands and wives. Under Tennessee law, domestic violence is physical injury or attempting to inflict physical injury on an adult or minor, or putting them in fear of physical harm, and it includes harm to or fear of harm to their animals. Tennessee law also includes victims of stalking and sexual assault later on in the statute. Stalking includes harassment, contact without consent, following a person, showing up at her or his house or job, calling, leaving items on their property, and so forth. Domestic violence is about power and control, one person's need and determination to dominate another person. So it can be physical and sexual, and it can also be verbal, emotional, and financial abuse. With the ability now to track people using cell phones, cases of stalking are increasing, and it's becoming harder to break free from abusers. We know women who have lost jobs because the batterer phoned the company 500, 600 times in one morning, wrecking the workday. An uncompassionate or uninformed employer combined with an obsessive batterer equals no hope for employment for some women. Typically, that batterer's need to control intensifies, and so does the mistreatment and abuse, the heartfelt apology, the reunion, a period of calm, and then the next attack. I understand that most of the time, by the time physical violence begins, the abuser has so dominated her life that she's cut off from her family and friends, isolated, feeling she has no one to turn to or who can help her. Even if she's employed, he controls all the money, so she also believes she can't take her children and leave, rent an apartment, and take care of everything on her own. Her self-esteem, her idea of herself has been shredded by ongoing verbal abuse, belittling, and demeaning words spoken viciously during terrifying physical assaults. And this is the person who must make a plan to rescue herself and her children. Every 9 seconds in the United States, a woman is assaulted or beaten. Violence against women tears women down emotionally and mentally, batters and breaks their bodies, and teaches children that vicious behavior is okay in relationships. In Memphis last year, our police department handled 15,041 domestic violence assaults. That's the physical assaults, the episodes that can most easily escalate to domestic homicides that regularly shock our community. Last year, 25 Memphians were killed by someone who was supposed to love them, someone in their family. On a day in November, the front page of the Commercial Appeal bore 2 murder stories, 2 female teachers killed by men they had chosen to leave. One smothered his wife and then burned her body, and the other shot her to death and then shot himself. The 15,041 number does not include other crimes committed by batterers, vandalism, intimidation, harassment, burglary, and stalking. It also does not count those who live in hells of constant demeaning verbal and emotional abuse. People who should love and protect each other instead are beating, kicking, strangling, raping, and cutting. 15,041. That's an average every day, 7 days a week, of more than 40 cases in Memphis last year. Our suburban cities and our sheriffs and police across the state all respond to these kinds of calls. And this is the ones reported. Who knows how many not reported? Scientists now look at MRI scans of babies' brains and see the impact of trauma and chaos. Thanks to the remarkable Urban Child Institute here in Memphis, we know that scientists have documented damage that is done when children ages 0 to 3 live in violence and then go to school, where they cannot concentrate, they are hypervigilant and easily angered, they lack ordinary social skills for dealing with other people. If a woman fears for her life, the lives of her children, and needs to literally hide from her abuser, she needs an emergency shelter. The YWCA of Greater Memphis operates our only emergency shelter, and they have room for 28 women and children. 15,041 assault cases, 28 beds. One of these is handicap accessible. Do we need some community change around shelter capacity, priorities, and funding? Yes, we do. Do we need attention to particular needs of disabled and senior women? Yes, we do. 15,041 assault cases and maybe 5 victim advocates to help navigate the court system. Do we need more victim advocates? Yes, we do. We need more support throughout the criminal justice system so that abusers are held accountable and victims get the support they need to stay away from that abuser and start a new productive life. This happens to all kinds of women and is perpetrated by all kinds of men. Tragically, we know from our conversations with survivors that many never call police or other agencies, ashamed of their situation, afraid he'll lose his job, or too defeated to believe that anybody can help. A close look at the population being arrested, charged, and appearing each day in our General Sessions Domestic Violence Court tells the story. One study says 83% are African American. This disparity is telling when we know from conversations, focus groups, and news reports that many others are battered and never call police. African American men are jailed for this behavior at a rate far surpassing the rate for white men. We regularly read reports of police and firefighters being arrested for assaulting wives and girlfriends. Most recently, a Memphis firefighter faced charges after a fight with his wife. He grabbed her ankles and dragged her through the house. She showed police the abrasions on her back. He continues to serve on full duty with the fire department. This is not a problem only of the very poor or the unemployed or uneducated. We have to address it from across the community and for everyone in the community. Batterers must be held accountable. Men must become more engaged in prevention efforts. Employers must recognize, respond, and refer to connect needy employees to community resources and must partner with community groups to increase resources and fill gaps. Legal officials often say that we cannot arrest our way out of domestic violence. This violence won't be solved by laws or policies or courts alone. All of us must become involved in outreach, awareness, linking the suffering to community resources and strengthening those resources so that all who are battered and the children living through it can become safe and free. And then in Memphis, we're just beginning to address another aspect of violence against women, a backlog of 12,164 aging rape kits dating back 25 or more years. Most of those have not been tested. They are evidence that was taken from the bodies of rape survivors but was never used in pursuit of rapists. These forensic kits were not sent to a lab for testing that could identify, confirm, or clear alleged assailants. They were not tested for DNA and were not entered into the National DNA Database. The Women's Council has applauded the Memphis Police Department and Mayor Wharton for stepping up to reveal this backlog and undertake to test all kits and resolve never to let it happen again, but still there is outrage. What if this evidence related to 12,000 shootings of men, or 12,000 violent bank robberies, or 12,000 carjackings that included assaults? Would it have been stored haphazardly and ignored for decades? Yeah. Most sexual assault victims are female. The crimes typically have no witnesses. The victim survivor recounts her story at the moment of greatest trauma, and again over several days. As her trauma reduces and brain function and memory return, so do details of the event that sometimes are used against her by police investigators. She can be accused of changing her story. Due to the lack of skillful sex crimes investigation, most accused rapists are never charged. National statistics say 4% of rapes are prosecuted. Police here and elsewhere struggle with determining, in their words, is she a true victim? These words speak volumes about the attitude of skepticism that greets a rape survivor when police respond. We can be outraged by this failure of our justice system, but outrage does no good unless that energy becomes action for change. We must have a new community conversation about rape. We must address and assess the system that responds to rape, from 911 dispatch to patrol, investigation, prosecution, courts, and probation, and our rape crisis services. We can and must talk together across agencies and advocate groups to assess attitudes, approach, tools, and capacity to collaborate to help victims and punish rape. Memphis, for Shelby, Tipton, Fayette, and Lauderdale counties. I'm sure you may have a copy of that report already, but for the audience, I do want to mention that when the economic impact of violence against women was measured in that study, it was priced at more than $886 billion. Billion. A phrase has become popular, women's rights are human rights, but what does that mean in the day-to-day life of women in Memphis and Shelby County and in Tennessee? Broadly and simply, it means that men and women should be treated the same in all aspects of life, to be free from discrimination and assured equal access to and opportunities in political and public life, and education, health, and employment. Safety and justice are crucial elements for society where equal and full access to opportunity can be achieved. Safety and justice are lacking for women in Memphis and Shelby County and indeed across Tennessee. Violence against women is at epidemic levels at school, at home, at work, and in community. The response by law enforcement and the criminal justice system is inadequate. Social services for victims and services are limited. Prevailing community attitudes disbelieve victims, disbelieve women, and fail to hold batterers and rapists accountable. When you get all the way down to the root of what we're dealing with, it's the age-old problem of violence against women, women being treated as objects who have no value beyond their physical usefulness, women being treated as property instead of persons, women being considered less. Around the world, gender-based violence kills and disables as many women between the ages of 15 and 44 as cancer. More often than not, perpetrators go unpunished. Tennessee should want to do better. Thank you for your attention.
Deborah,
Yes.
the statistics about kids in school brings up a number of things of concern. They're not, quote, a protected class under the law except for assault. I'm not sure, as we call that, discrimination in the workplace. In the school place, what's the remedies is question number one. Number two, if young men have no consequences for actions in the school place, why should they, when do they learn that it's wrong and that you don't get to do this?
Exactly.
Can you elaborate on I didn't articulate those questions well, but you could. bail me out with an answer.
Well, and you're an attorney and I'm not, so the things about protected class and all that I'm not up to speed on. I just know that when we worked with the girls for several years as we worked on this study, the things they described happening at school can't possibly be okay, can't possibly be legal, okay treatment. So I know that much about that. The aspect of this that boys, young men are not held accountable is a huge piece of the problem. They see this behavior in their media and among their sort of celebrity heroes, and so then it's also become normalized in some communities. So then it is carried out at school, and I've heard more than one report of faculty stepping into a hallway, seeing something like this going on, and quickly stepping back in so that they don't have to intervene, so that they don't have to try to have anything to say or try to do anything about this. So the kids are really on their own too much. I really think that there has to be a way that we can, in this case, work on policy or laws that would require different discipline, different approach in the school systems. Sexual assault is a huge problem on campuses. That's documented. The president's recently been talking about that again. So we are required, I think, as a community to work together to find ways to make every contact point with our young people one where they are shown a better way to behave and the way healthy relationships ought to look. I don't know if I did much better answering than you did asking, but there's so much in this. There's so much in this. And hostile environment absolutely is a phrase that applies to what's going on at school now. Whether it can be pursued by courts is something I haven't explored yet, but I know we documented that it's happening. Thank you.
Thank you.